I just want to bring commendation to a group of workers, or two groups of workers who many times, many days and nights, we take for granted, but who yesterday we would have realized that without those workers, today perhaps I may not have been able to talk with you through the medium of this virtual platform here this morning, this media conference, because we would not have had power, electricity. We take for granted the input of workers who go to work at all different shifts, who burn the midnight oil, who, while the country is asleep, who are at work. And there's no pay that can compensate for the sleepless nights and for all the toil that those workers would do to ensure that the country's economy continues, that the wheels of the economy continues to turn, that all of the classes this morning, all of the school this morning can get electricity, all of the devices and so on. All of the business places can get electricity today. That did not happen by guess. And so as we flick the switch, we take for granted that the lights must come on, but we do not take into account the processes that would be responsible for that, which processes would not work unless it carries the valued input of that human body, workers at the end of the day. And so when the power failed yesterday and the country was plunged into a total blackout, it was workers who worked to bring back that power. And so from whatever area of the country you would have you are residing today and yesterday and so on, you would have been crying out for you want this electricity to come back quickly. You want it to come back quickly because it would have interrupted the normal sphere of activities and the normal way in which we do things. Certainly, it would have interrupted our normal life yesterday. But our lives are made normal by what is considered to be normal on the part of those who produce that normality, which are the workers, which sadly and unfortunately are taken for granted. And therefore, when the government announced their retrenchment in those sectors, we pay very little attention to what is happening. And so if you have less workers, your ability to restore power in emergencies like one that occurred yesterday, your ability to do that, to restore power, will be further curtailed and so on. And therefore, those are the things that I'm calling attention to for the country to take notice. And it is only in times of crisis we understand the things that we should have done before, or the things that we should have stood up for before, and then sometimes it's too late. But I want to commend wholeheartedly, without reservation this morning, all of those workers in the power generation company of Trinidad and Tobago, Powergen, all of those workers in at T&TEC, both the workers in Powergen and T&TEC, firstly Powergen workers who would have worked tirelessly to restore the power, and then the T&TEC comrades who would have worked to distribute it in phased basis throughout the country. Because that power couldn't just come back up, and it haven't come back up by the Powergen workers. It would have had to be phased in, and it took workers to do that. It was not Dr. Rowley. I want to make the point. It was not facetious and that dictator Dr. Rowley. He could have commanded as much as he commanded. He could not have commanded the electricity to come back and power would have come back. No, that is not how it works. It was not Al-Wari and that bunch of lazy or Gonzalez. As a matter of fact, let me just single him out. It was not him at all. Long before he was on the scene, there were workers working in those utilities, and in this case, both Powergen and T&TEC and so on. Not Marvin Gonzalez at all. Not that fella at all. They are the least when it comes to these types of crises. It is frontline workers, like frontline workers who would have protected us and continue to protect us in the time of the pandemic and so on. And so it's not the government. The government don't work. And in this case, the government is not working. The only work they are doing is to prevent us from working. And therefore, ours is the clear position that since it is workers, we want to commend on behalf of the joint trade union movement and the trade union movement in this country. I want to thank all of those workers who would have risked their lives in the dark and so on last night to ensure that power is restored to Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much, Powergen workers. Thank you very much, T&TEC workers. And you know, we ought to be very appreciative and so on to our fellow comrades and workers and so on when they step up to the plate. We want to thank you very much, members of the media, for covering this it's a bit more than brief statement here this morning. And I will invite you to ask any questions.
Good morning to everyone on the panel. Mr. Roget, I know you touched on the issue with the outage yesterday, but can you just respond directly to some concerns raised that it could have been sabotage and, you know, maybe in part due to the issues raised this morning, the pending public sector mandate? Could you respond to that directly, please?
Yeah, absolutely not. I say categorically, yes, that is not an issue. And or no involvement at all from the workers involved. If anything at all, it is where I pointed to this morning, commending them for restoring the power to the nation. Absolutely, that has nothing to do with our workers and workers generally. Absolutely not. I want to make that very clear, very clear. For whatever conspiracy theory or so that whoever might have, our workers are the ones that would have corrected the situation. Yeah? None involvement at all in that. None. And just communicate that, Cindy, very clearly to your editors. The workers of Trinidad and Tobago, the Powergen workers and the T&TEC workers are not in no way, shape, or form involved in the past, in the present, yesterday's activity, not involved. There was a failure. A proper investigation will determine the source or the cause of that failure. Until that occurs, we would not comment, but I can comment forcefully that on the basis of the information that we know to possess, no workers committed any act, small, medium, or large, of sabotage. Those workers saved the country from plunging into further chaos. Yes, by restoring power. We are talking today because it is the same workers who they want to blame. You know, they always look for somebody else to blame. I'm not surprised, or should I be? Dr. Rowley might come Saturday and, well, you can blame the workers, not the workers, but blame COVID for that. Everything is to blame COVID, yeah? And perhaps the opposition or something like that. But that's how they are, blame everybody. But I can tell you, I'm speaking on behalf of those workers we represent, and we represent both the T&TEC workers and the Powergen workers, and I can say categorically that those workers are not responsible. And you notice how I take my time to reiterate that point. So I don't want in any way, shape, or form the editors to take that outside of my direct response. The workers are not responsible. Save the country. The workers save the country. And they are currently at this time continuing to ensure reliability in that regard. Thank you very much, comrades. Thank you very much, Trinidad and Tobago.